Okay, everyone, let's get started today. The title today is "And So It Begins." I'm joined by Renee and Mike. Mike's name tag says Renee for some reason. Don't worry, that actually is Mike. We're going to feature some brand new consumer data and also a look at what's happening as the world begins to reopen and what that means for restaurants and other food places. This is a weekly webinar, happens every Friday at 2 p.m. Join us every Friday. We'll try to keep it fun. And we want to say thank you for spending your time with us. There's a million things to be doing. It's the first day of May, and you spend it with us, and we could not be happier. So we promise that you will be entertained and hopefully learn a number of new things today. But again, you have our sincere gratitude for spending time with us. As a public service announcement, I do this one last time. Use that chat button, chat like crazy. Tell us where you're clicking in from. Say hi to all your colleagues across the country from the food and food service industries. And when you chat, make sure you select all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your warm wishes. But thank you again, all panelists and attendees. Chat like crazy. We're trying to break our record. Last week, we generated 25,000 words of chat during last week's webinar. Let's see if we can break that today. So share all your thoughts with everyone. As you know, we have a fantastic resource page on the Data Central website. There's a ton of new reports. We just published a new one today on the human condition, sort of the psychology of coronavirus and what it says to us about our emotional state and how we want to engage with food going forward. I think there's over 35 reports and exhibits there now. There's a ton of material. It gets added to every single day virtually. And for those of you in food service, which I think is the vast majority of us, you also have the food service impact model where you can see the dollar impact of coronavirus on the 2020 calendar by segment on both an operator spend basis and a consumer spend basis. And you can even update the assumptions yourself to see how things will change under different scenarios. So use it. It's right there. It's there for you, completely free as well. So make great use of it. And we did this with our friends at IFMA. And we're very thankful to them for helping us put that program together. Some of you asked last week, also said we'd love to see some of this red state, blue state analysis we did, where we looked at governors of red states and governors of blue states, and how many locations each chain has in red governor states versus blue governor states. This is now available for you on that coronavirus resource page, not just for the top chains we show here, but for all 500 top chains. That detail is there for you. It's available free of charge. Just go to the resource page, scroll down, and you'll see a US map with a yellow background. Click that file and you can download the top 500 by red state, blue state locations. Okay, well, I'm gonna spend just a little bit of time on this, a tiny bit. We continue to see what looks like a flattening or a downward trajectory in terms of people's personal concern over coronavirus. So I think that's good news. It's not been a sharp downward decline, but it looks like it is moving in that direction. We're still sort of within the statistical margin of error right now, so we cannot definitively say that people are less concerned, but it seems like it's at the very least holding steady, and there's a good probability we are seeing a downward movement. The same holds true for people that say they definitely avoid eating out. That number peaked at 68% in the second week of April. Heading into the the last few days of April, we're now down at about 57%, which is a little bit under that historic trend line that was sort of in that low 60s. So again, that's an improvement too. And the other stat that we track pretty frequently is what actually concerns people the most. Is it the public health crisis or the economic crisis? I think when we first started tracking this, it was 63% public health, 37% economic. That number fluctuates a little bit. Again, we're still sort of in that statistical margin of error, but we do think that we're going to see these numbers can start to balance out and maybe even move in opposite directions at some point. So with that, we can do our first poll. We'd like to get your thought on this. So let's do this one over here. In 30 days from now, let's go 30 days out into the future. What do you think people will be more concerned about? The economic crisis or the public health crisis? So this is really interesting. So Renee, Mike, without guessing yet, can you see the results as they come in, or can only I see that?
No,
so you don't know.
Yeah. So, I was able to vote. But...
Oh, you were able. So let's see. We're gonna give it. We've had over 1,000 people vote already, so we're going to give it like another 20 seconds. So like the votes are pretty firmly in, and I'm going to have you guess. What do you think? So going 30 days out, what do you think? How do you think people voted in this forum today? Do you think more of them said economic or more said public health?
Economic.
What do you guys think?
You said economic?
I said economic. 30 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you want to put your finger on percentage? What percentage do you think guessed economic?
Oh, geez.
It's like one of those carnival games. Can you guess your weight within 5 pounds or something?
Like
Can you guess-
80, maybe 80.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, it's already at 59, or no, wait, economic is lower right now.
You
Ooh,
just
I'm not
vote
gonna-
entirely and just ask Renee what she thinks the answer would be, because she
Oh,
is spot on.
Dang, all right.
59%. Yeah, and again, this is with well over 1,000 people
Hmm.
voting in just the 45 seconds that we had the poll open. Okay. So one thing that we know is that men and women actually disagree a little bit about this. That women tend to be a little bit more cautious. Men are more likely to say that it's worth the risk to reopen the economy right now. 45% of men have that sentiment versus 31% of women. This actually mirrors some other data we've been tracking as well. So just one thing to keep in mind, that there is a little bit of a gender divide. The question though is, we are reopening. It seems like the dam is starting to burst, and it seems like this is a one-way movement, starting with, Georgia and Tennessee and Florida and Texas and some other places. The question is, as restaurants reopen, will the staff be ready in time to sort of be there for those reopenings? Will restaurants have access to the staff that they need? So let's take a look at the stats, right? 66% roughly of adult Americans are sort of in, the employment pool, let's say. As a result of the pandemic, we have about half of those folks saying, I'm still working, but I'm now working from home. That's most of us, probably. You have about 18% that say, you know what, I'm working just as I was before. I'm still going into the office or factory or wherever it might be. And then you have the last group, which is similar size, 18%, that's been laid off or furloughed already. So we wanted to focus on that last 18%, the 18% of Americans that have been laid off or furloughed as a result of the pandemic. And the question is very simple. What are they going to do? So I think the magic number right now is 600. Renee, Mike, you know what 600 might represent?
I was trying to figure that out when I saw these slides.
So it's a mystery slide.
Yeah.
So perhaps this provides a little more context. This is what unemployment benefit looks like by state. The blue stem is the maximum state benefit for an individual. And basically the way the math works is it's different from state to state, but on average you get maybe like half of what your income was back in weekly unemployment benefits from the state for 26 weeks. Federal has now extended that an additional 13 weeks. And then on top of that, through July 31st and potentially beyond, if there's an extension, the federal government is also providing an extra $600 in benefit per week. So what you're seeing here is essentially the max benefit that you would receive by state on a weekly basis for being unemployed, at least for the foreseeable future, right, or for the next couple of months. And the question then becomes, well, how does this compare to what people were making when they were working in the restaurant? The break-even point, depending on the state, is something like $55,000, $60,000 a year equivalent in salary at this rate, if you're getting both the federal and the state component of unemployment. So we want to understand, for those 18% of people that have been laid off or furloughed across industries, what would you do if you had your job offered back to you today? 54% said, hell yeah, let me get back to work. I want to return back to work immediately. That means you have almost half that are not saying, hell yeah, I want to come back to work immediately. 40% say, I'm going to just wait for my unemployment to run out first because I'm probably doing better from the unemployment than I am from what I would make at my job. And then about 6% said, nah, no matter what, I'm just not going back at all. So as restaurants reopen and they try to get their staff back, some of the staff requires significant training, like maybe it took months and months to figure out how to be really good at that job, whether it's front of house or back of house. Up to half that staff might say, I'm not really ready to come back yet, which could be an issue. So if you're an operator, you're probably facing a lot of this right now. And if you're a supplier to the operator community, you may look to offer solutions that'll make it easier for operators to operate with reduced staff if that's the reality that they face. One thing we wanted to understand too is what's going on with the human condition. This is actually the new report that we published today. It's on the human condition. You know, what's happening with our emotional state, our moods, our overall mindset as a society as it relates to coronavirus and its impact on us. So here's a question. Which emotions or moods are you most looking forward to getting from when you go back to eating in a restaurant, right? And you can sort of see at the bottom, curiosity, inspiration, relief, goes all the way up to the top, you know, indulgence, satisfaction, joy, and enjoyment. And if you look at the top, it's, you know, joy, enjoyment, satisfaction, indulgence. Those are the things you want to center around, but we actually have blurred out with question marks the number one thing. So in chat, can you guess what we have hidden at the top? What is the emotional state or the mood that people most want to get from eating out at a restaurant? Like the thing that they haven't had in their life, right? So we know of the top four, the other three are joy, satisfaction, and indulgence. But what's the number one thing? Are we getting a lot of guesses in chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Renee, Mike, do you have a guess?
I saw it already.
Oh, you already know.
I think I saw it as well. Yeah.
Well, that's not.
It was in here. Some people have got it.
Easy.
They got it. Well, bravo, because the number one thing is relaxation. So as we think about the experience that we want to offer up to the diner, that is sort of paramount. Now, there will be some folks that just want to like rush in, rush out, that are a little freaked out. But for those that want to stay, let them enjoy that experience. Like, let them really feel that sense of normalcy, relaxation, exhaling. That is the number one thing that they're looking for when they go back out to eat at a restaurant. And you can see it's sort of interesting how these desired sort of mood states changes by generation. So if you spotlight some of the differences, you know, boomers are particularly likely to crave relaxation. And then Gen Zers are a little bit different, where they're more likely to favor things like curiosity, inspiration, and this notion of peace and contentment as well, which I haven't really put my finger on what's driving that, but the curiosity and inspiration thing among Gen Z, that totally makes sense because they're often more likely to want to try something new just because it's new. The key thing to remember is that restaurants play a really important part just in our mental well-being, right? Going out and being able to eat at a restaurant improves our mental state. It improves our sense of community. If you look at the things that people say they're looking forward to, it's that dining in restaurants helps them feel normal again. That eating at restaurants reminds them of better times. You know, these are the things that we should be playing toward, that return to normalcy and just how it makes the person feel. It's not just how the food tastes or anything, but like that almost indescribable sense that a restaurant can convey to its guests. And I thought this was interesting too. What do you see yourself doing more of as a result of the pandemic? So not just related to food, but just in general, what are things that people say, I'm gonna do more of this now? I find like the top thing to be very, very heartening. And I think probably most of us can agree that we feel the same way too, that it's taught us to be more grateful for things that maybe we took for granted early in our lives. Like, I have a newfound appreciation for how awesome walking the dog is. It's like fantastic. I used to take that for granted. Now I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. And there are some things that are really all about gratitude. 3 of the top 5 items we have here are being grateful for things you took for granted, thanking and supporting grocery store and restaurant workers, supporting your independent mom and pop restaurants, things that really show a sense of gratitude and community. There is an interesting flip side though, which is you have to go all the way down this list. I don't know if you can see my mouse when I wiggle it around, but I go all the way down this list, and then you see this number here, which is probably a little bit alarming, which is people don't think that they have greater faith or trust in humanity. as a result of this. So you've heard us say week after week that this is a human story, but this has also been a very divisive story as well. You know, we talked in previous weeks about how a lot of the ideas and opinions about when we should reopen, what safety measures we should undertake, how important reopening is divided largely along political lines. It's ideologically driven in some ways. So that can be a divisive force. And as a result, some people don't have an overarching renewed faith in humanity and other people as a whole. But it does not prevent this from still being an extremely human story where people celebrate the humanity they do see around them. They just don't describe that necessarily to the entire population because they know roughly half the people disagree with them. So this actually plays out. If you ask people, and we do this, what do you worry about when you go into a restaurant, like in terms of contact with other people? They're not concerned about people in their own party. They're not even that concerned about staff, but they do say they are concerned about other restaurant goers and other, diners in the cafe or the restaurant or the cafeteria or what have you. And check out this stat. 72% of consumers do not trust others to act responsibly once businesses reopen. Right? That is a staggeringly high number. So this is one thing to remember. If you're thinking about the setup of your dining room or your operation or whatever it may be, it needs to be optimized not just for your staff interactions with the customer and your customer interactions with the store, but the interactions between customers and other customers. So that's probably one of the hardest things to conceptualize. It's how does table A interact with table B and everything in between? When someone goes, if there's a line at the restroom, what does that potentially mean? If people are sort of, if there's a forced interaction that way. Now, this may very well be a thing where it just diminishes over time naturally because we'll get used to stuff. But at least initially, some of the potential freak out, thinking could happen more customer to customer than customer to staff or customer to table or what have you. And just to sort of show something that I think is pretty positive though is, again, every time we ask any version of this question, they're all different, but anytime there's this sentiment of what are the things you're looking forward to, why do you want to go back out at restaurants, this notion of just supporting the industry and supporting the restaurants and those in our neighborhood and our communities that we love so much, it always rises to the top. And I think it does say that there is not just pent-up demand from the consumer's perspective, but there is a pent-up desire to support this industry. And we really just have to be sensitive to the consumer and allow them to do that for us. They do want to help. So let's talk real quickly about craving. So we're starting to open back up. What foods do people want to have? What's that experience going to be like? Well, let's take a look at a couple of quick things. So this one, I would like to get your take on. So use chat. Do you think that when consumers start going back out to restaurants again, the first thing they're going to want is something that's healthy because they think it's going to be good for their bodies and help them fight off the virus, perhaps, and maybe help with immunity? So are they looking for healthier solutions, or are they thinking my first meal I want something really indulgent? Chat it out. Do your vote in chat for whether you think it's a healthy or indulgent thing people are most craving when they first go out. Renee, what type of voting are we seeing so far?
Mostly indulgent.
Yeah, that's because we have very smart people attending.
Yeah.
It is in fact indulgent. 68% of consumers say that first thing I'm going for is the indulgent thing, and it totally makes sense, right? You're thinking about, cannot wait to go to restaurants. I want to feel normal again. I want to eat that really delicious fill in the blank that I've always had. Damn the calories, who cares? I just cannot wait to have this thing again. So here's another one. This one I think is much harder to guess. Which foods do consumers most miss getting from restaurants? So this is a combination of what type of foods do you like, and also a combination of what stuff have you not been able to get. So this could be, you know, a general type of food. It could be a specific, you know, type of food item. Use chat. What do you think this is? I'll give you like 30 seconds because I'm curious to see what you all think. Which foods or types of foods, you know, do consumers most miss from restaurants? And Mike, Renee, I don't know if you've seen the answer yet.
I don't remember it now.
This one I thought was actually not shocking, but I thought it was surprising.
I was surprised too, yeah. Most people in the chat are saying sushi. There's a lot of sushi and seafood.
I was thinking, I mean, that's the one thing that I love.
That's my answer too, to be honest, although I do have to say that Nashville is not the center of sushi, the sushi universe. So my options are already limited.
Lots of guesses though.
Any other guesses in there that rose to the top?
Lots of Mexican, steak.
You said Mexican?
Mhm.
I never would have guessed that, but that's actually the number one thing. More votes for Mexican than anything else, and by a statistically significant margin.
Mhm.
I think the list is actually really interesting. This is not necessarily a pure ranking of foods that just people love overall, because that actually looks different. We actually know that from our other data sets. But here you have like Mexican in the number one spot. Seafood is up there because we're not doing that at home so much. Right? And you can see sushi is much higher on this list than it would normally be. If you asked the general public, what do you know, do more people love sushi or do more people love fried chicken? I don't think it's really a contest, but here, sushi actually noses out fried chicken. Then you go all the way down to the bottom, and some of these are categories that people love, right? Like the love for mac and cheese is extraordinarily high. We know that from our flavor tool. But people been eating a lot of mac and cheese at home for the last 6 weeks. So it's not the first thing that they're going out and craving. So again, you'll have copies of this if you want to download the presentation on Monday. But I thought this was really interesting. So what do you think people are going to order on their first trip back to a restaurant? First time, let's say they dine in a dining room again. Are they going to go for their familiar favorite item? Or are they going to try something completely new? Like, oh, I want to try like the newest special that you have? Or are they going to go back to their familiar classic favorite? Let us know on chat. And Renee, if you could let me know what most of the answers are.
Most people are saying favorite.
Yep, indeed, right? By an 80-20 split. People are going to go for their familiar favorite. And, you know, one thing that's really interesting is it's not just categories of items. There are specific dishes that people crave. So we have a system called Brand Fingerprints where we, you know, essentially evaluate change from a consumer's perspective across hundreds of different metrics. One of them is what do you crave on a menu, where we're not showing stuff to the consumer. They're just saying, hey, for this restaurant, these are the items I think about when I think about this restaurant. So this one's easy. Which restaurant is this? Can you all guess? This one's pretty simple, right? It's obvious. If you look pretty quickly, it's obvious. Are we getting a lot of answers there?
Yep.
Right.
They all got it.
Clearly Red Lobster, right? From the Cheddar Bay biscuits, you can see. Let's look at a couple others that might be, you know, a little bit less obvious, but still, yeah, I think that you could definitely guess. What restaurant is this? Take a look at some of the.
People are getting him.
Yep. Pretty much got it right away. Yeah, there we go. That would be P.F. Chang's. How about this one? I'd say if P.F. Chang's was like a 3 in difficulty, this one's maybe like a 5 or a 6 in difficulty. What are we getting in chat?
Yeah, more different answers, but I think we've got it.
What's the answer?
I think it's California Pizza Kitchen, right?
It is, in fact, California Pizza Kitchen. But you see how there's lots of places that serve pizza and salads. There's lots of places that serve seafood, but you could really nail it down because you could see the specific things that people crave. This is what they're going to come back for on those first trips. And how about this one? A lot of places serve breakfast, right? But can you identify this one place that serves breakfast and other day parts from all the other places that serve those day parts too?
I think
Any
people
guesses?
have it.
People have it, right?
Yep.
And that's the beautiful thing. People ascribe specific craveable items to each of these restaurants that they love. This is what they're going to come back for initially, right? At a place like Cracker Barrel. So I think what's actually going to happen is it's going to look something a little bit like this. Imagine your first trip back to your favorite restaurant you haven't been to in a while. You are going to go in, you already know what you want before you get there. Just give me my favorites. Maybe in this next time you come back, you're thinking, yeah, I'm probably still going to stick with my tried and true dishes. I want to get this out of my system a little bit. But by the time you get your third visit back, you maybe change a little bit. You're saying, nah, maybe I'll still get that entree that I love, but I might try to mix it up a little bit with a different appetizer or something. You get a little variety and try something a little bit new. And then on the fourth trip, I'm starting to feel more adventurous. And on the fifth trip, it's like, hey, I'm a trendy foodie. What new thing do you have for me? I want something completely new. And this is the message for the entire industry. Do not be lulled into thinking that consumers just want to eat an endless supply of meatloaf and comfort foods based on the early receipts you see as you first reopen. When you first reopen, people will want their comfortable, familiar favorites. As those trips progress, they're going to want something new. Keep that innovation pipeline full, or you will lose your customer after maybe the second or third trip. And that really is the key to the industry. So keep innovation going. With that, I did want to transition to what the heck is happening in the world now. Mike and Renee are going to lead us through a conversation around what's going on. We have states reopening, all sorts of craziness. What are we actually seeing in the field? And I'll invite everyone in chat. If you have ideas, opinions, as we go through some of these examples, share your thoughts with the community. Your feedback is just as valuable as anything that any of us are saying on camera. A lot of us actually tune in each week to hear you share your ideas with the community as well. So with that, Mike and Renee, let's do that old thing where every time you want me to advance a slide, just go boop, and I'll press the next one.
All right.
Boop?
Thanks, Jack. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, yeah. So I think the New York Times reported this morning on how many states are either open or in the process of opening. So I think we're, as of May 1st, at about 28 states that are either open, in the process of reopening, or have some plan for when they're going to reopen. And then the other 22 states are, still in kind of lockdown right now. So it's actually a good percentage of the country that's kind of thinking about the future, or already open to some extent. So we wanted to just pull some of the examples of, what we're seeing out there, because we have to get it right. I think the biggest thing is that, in the states that are open, the restaurants that haven't opened yet are not, because they're like, we don't have another chance. We can't, close down again, throw out a bunch of supplies again. So we have to get it right this time. So, just in the industry, we just want to make sure that everybody kind of helps each other and that we have a lot of information out there. So we pulled a bunch of examples on what we've been seeing, but yeah, absolutely. Everybody in the chat, if you have ideas or you've been seeing things, we always read it after this is done. So I know Alaska, so Alaska opened last Friday for restaurants, but it wasn't until Monday, right, Renee, that Anchorage could open.
Yeah. So boop, Jack, the next one. So last Friday, the state of Alaska opened, but actually for Anchorage, it wasn't until Monday. And there's more stipulations as well. In Anchorage, you have to have, they're asking all restaurants to have customer logbooks too. So in case there is future contact tracing, everybody who's coming in is writing their names and numbers down. But otherwise, throughout Alaska too, this restaurant here, they have individual condiment packets. So I know some people were asking about, what are we doing with the shared utensils on the tables and things like that. So they're having the packets instead, or they're having bottles that are sanitized between customers.
Renee, I wanted to clarify that. You said that there's a logbook, and is it required that you fill that out, or is it just suggested?
For Anchorage, it's required. Restaurants are asking customers. And I guess, asking, it's kind of unclear. That is the hard thing, I think, with everything that's going on. It's just like, there's state regulations, there's different city ones as well. But Anchorage, I read, is asking.
So that's really doing it the old-fashioned way, just pen and paper?
Yeah. In case there is contact tracing.
And as we go, Mike, you may want to pull your mic just a little bit closer as well.
This giant
let's go to Georgia.
And then, yeah, Georgia. So for better or worse, this was probably kind of the flashpoint in the country earlier this week when things started opening up again. And so, they have a set of 39 requirements that they've asked restaurants to comply with. And I think the thing, these early states are kind of setting the stage for what we'll see in the future. A lot of people are looking at those 39 requirements in Georgia and figuring that it's probably going to be pretty similar in their state as well. So it's things like, you can only have 10 customers per 500 square feet. So kind of larger initiatives like that, all the way down to you can't have cut up lemons in the restaurant. So touch points.
Wait, you can't have cut up lemon?
Yeah, no cut up lemons in the restaurant. So
why is that?
You don't want to have them exposed to the air and the germs out there. So,
The lemons?
Yeah, lemons specifically, yeah.
Why would a lemon being exposed to the air be any different than your food being exposed to the air?
I don't know if it's so much the lemon as opposed to kind of anything like that, but I mean, cut up lemons are pretty common in restaurants. So.
Yeah, so I think it's just more like back of house, like, somebody has to cut up the lemon to put into an iced tea or whatnot, as opposed to having them all set out and ready to go.
I do not understand. If someone smarter than us in chat can offer up a theory for the lemon thing, I don't really understand that one. But, let's go here.
Sorry, in the picture there, it's not required, but a lot of locations in Georgia are doing temperature checks when you walk in. And it was kind of interesting. I think that was, an option that a lot of operators thought they would get pushback on from customers coming in. But they said they haven't as much, that, if you kind of convey some authority when you walk in and you say, this is what we're going to do, that customers have actually been pretty compliant. I think it's just so important to also understand that every state, every city, every municipality, even every location is going to be different. So, one is fully open and another location isn't necessarily fully open. So this is a food hall in Marietta, Georgia, and they're not going to open the indoor section of the food hall, but they are going to have dining outside. So it's just so important to get the information out there about what you're doing, because it's going to be so different for all the locations that customers go to.
Are you hearing much, Mike and Renee, about places that are doing, let's say, like parking lot dining or anything?
Yeah, a lot. I know there was actually one city that said that's going to be all that they offer. They're not going to allow dining rooms to open, but they're only going to do al fresco dining for the next month or two.
And we'll see an example from Texas, too, in a few slides, where it's all patio dining as well.
Yep.
So this is Madison Chop House in Madison, Georgia. And so what they've had is actually just one of the lessons too is just showcasing to your customers that you're taking things seriously. So they actually have all employees, when they come in, have their temperatures checked, and it's all written on a whiteboard so that when customers come in, they're seeing that, hey, these safety precautions have been taken place. And then they also have this sign here that's like, if you're sick, don't come in.
So if I could offer up a piece of potential advice, feel free to ignore this. But like, I feel like the most haphazard thing is when you scribble a note. This is like one step up, where you use like the $80 printer in your office, and the 10-cent plastic holder with some Scotch tape, which is maybe a little bit better.
It looks like it's laminated, actually, so that's actually pretty nice.
No, it's just one of those like little transparent like plastic like things you shove a piece of paper inside, right? I mean, and then like it's a plastic, like this does not, to me, feel like it's very professional. And I think it's a signal to consumers like, okay, this looks like a little like, just done seat of your pants a little bit, as opposed to something that, really nicely printed signage. So if you're an operator, we would implore you to have really professional looking merchandising and signage. And if you're a supplier, you probably have tons of customers that don't have the resources to do something that looks professional, like nice looking floor decals, nice looking signs, framed well, that would maybe be very willing to take your help there, need your help, and perhaps even willing to do something that bears your brand on it if you could help them with that merchandising and signage. Renee, Mike, you're both writers. Is that middle sentence, "this is for," is that even grammatically correct?
What does it say there?
So this is for yours and our safety.
Yeah, maybe a little spell check on that one. Yeah.
So that's the idea. So I hope Madison Chop House is not watching, but if you are, we don't mean to say anything negative. I think you're doing a great job.
It's a good lesson for them. Yeah.
But yeah, more professional signage is usually a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then Waffle House. So I saw a couple people in the chat talking about Waffle House. So Waffle House, you might have heard of that Waffle House index that FEMA uses to see if they should send some money towards the disaster relief area. Just because if Waffle House closes down, you know things are pretty serious there. So people are kind of watching Waffle House to see when they will open back up. And you know what you see at Waffle House is pretty typical. I think you'll see at almost every location across the country. So there's going to be some tables and chairs that are blacked off. You can see they blacked it off with tape here. They used bags in the previous picture. You know, cutting down touch points all throughout the restaurant. Touch points, touch points, touch points. I know pretty much every restaurant right now is kind of going through their front of house and back of house and seeing where there are touch points and cutting them down. And then the other thing is just, you know, sanitizer everywhere. Sanitizer on the tables, sanitizer when you walk in the door. You know, that's what we're definitely going to see a lot of.
Yeah, so this is actually just kind of gauging the temperature in Georgia. And, you know, if there's anyone on chat that's, you know, in Georgia right now, you know, just share it as well, your thoughts. But this is a broadcaster friend of mine who is in Macon, Georgia. And, you know, this was last Friday asking, hey, you know, how is everybody feeling? Are you going to go out to the hair salons? Are you going to go out to the restaurants? And it was interesting. She said that most of those 100 comments on there were people saying that they're not ready to go out yet. But that was, you know, it kind of is really a personal choice. And it depends on, you know, if you have a family member who's been affected, you know, with COVID themselves, you know, if you have a first responder in the family, like I do, things like that. So really just like, you know, not taking it too personally, you know, if your restaurants are opening and people aren't flooding in and they still want maybe that safety of delivery and takeout, you know, that's not that they're not trying to support your restaurant. It's more of that safety thing. And actually here, she said that most people were not wanting to go out to restaurants or things like that yet. But a lot of people wanted to go get their nails done. So there are some different priorities, I think, to consider.
And to be fair, I mean, these responses are biased by who's in their social network, right?
Yeah.
So we should not necessarily assume that they're representative of the general population.
Right. Yeah, I think she has like 5,000 followers on that page, and there was just 100 comments.
So let's go from that to something that actually is representative of the general population that gets to a bigger question, which is whether or not consumers are actually ready to go into the restaurant. How would they feel about you opening your restaurant? Like, is there a sentiment that if you open up on day one when it's allowed, that some of the potential customers are going to say, ooh, I don't know if I like that, and I'm not going to think very well of a chain or an independent or any restaurant that opens immediately and, you know, potentially damage your brand in doing so. So we actually ask consumers to imagine that very scenario. You know, how do you feel if your favorite chain restaurant, in this case, opened up for dine-in service on the very first day that it was allowed? And I was actually a little bit surprised. I actually think these results are much more positive than I would have expected. You know, about half the people say it doesn't really bother me one way or the other. Almost 30% say this would actually be really positive. I think they should open up as quick as possible. And only about half as many, about 16%, said, you know what, this would be irresponsible. I would think less of the brand if they opened up on day one. So basically, if the state says it's okay, you probably are, from a brand perception perspective, like we're not even talking about safety at this point, but just from a consumer perception of a brand perspective, you're probably okay to actually open up fairly quickly following when you're allowed to. And keep in mind too, this is asked at a time when we're just talking about early states, and there's a big debate about whether things should be open at all, right? So as time rolls on, and let's say you get to like the next batch and the next batch of states, I think that positive reaction number will only increase for those, because we'll hopefully be a little bit out of this time of this giant debate about, you know, boy, this is just way too early. If you remember last week, we looked at May 1st, you know, today basically, as a target date, and most consumers said, yeah, May 1st is a little bit too early. But even given that, only 16% say, hey, if you open up on the first day it's allowed in our state, the rest of us think it's going to be fine, the other 84%. So if the state says it's okay, that is a fairly good indicator that most consumers will at least be, not against you. So with that, I did want to ask a quick poll again, and here's one for you. So this might be a controversial one. Actually, no, not controversial, interesting, let's say. do you think we will see a major relocking down of businesses in the early states opening up? A major relocking down, right? So this is like a significant relockdown effort, not just, closing another beach or something, like a full relocking down. So Renee, Mike, I don't want you to bias the results, but let's give it another 20 seconds, and I want to see what you think is going to happen.
What do you think, Mike?
What do you think? Yeah, we've had about almost 1,000 votes already. So, what do you think?
I think it is going to be hard for them to lock it down again. I think once they open, it'll be hard to get people to go back inside.
Yeah, Renee?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of split because of my personal, but yeah, I don't think people are going to want to be.
So I think it's not even a question of what you believe is right personally, but do you see a scenario where the whole thing locks down again?
I kind of do, but I don't know.
Okay, that's actually fairly fair because we have a split vote essentially with everyone here. So we're at 1,000 votes. So let me end this and I'll share this out. 60-40 roughly think that we're not relocking down. We're opening up and we're not looking back. Essentially, I would actually personally tend to agree with that. I mean, it's really hard to say, but let's say we do see some sort of an additional flare up. I think so many people have gotten a taste of what it's like to be back out in the world again. And now they know what it's like to be home and maybe how much they wanted to get back out. They will be more resistant to having to go back. Right? Like if you, let's say you have never even heard, actually, any of you watched that thing on Netflix? It's called The Platform.
Oh, I actually watched that.
It's like super disturbing, but super interesting.
It's super disturbing.
You're like in this very weird vertical jail, essentially,
terrible.
A vertical prison. Like if you didn't know what that was, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll go there for 30 days and serve my time. But once you go and you're like, there ain't no way I'm going back to that. And I think we're gonna have a little bit of that mentality as it relates to just being sheltered up again. So 60-40 vote. Okay. Tell us about this. Is this the same place?
No, so this is these two pictures, yeah. So this is a place in Texas where they did have, they were allowed to open on patios. And maybe just kind of a lesson for operators, if you're gonna share that you're open. So they actually posted that picture on the left and on Twitter, and a lot of people were, giving them hell, basically saying, hey, you're not 6 feet apart, you're so close to each other. And then they reposted the photo on the right and said, oh, it was a camera angle, they are very far apart. So just kind of a lesson and to be cautious, if you're gonna talk about safety and reopening, maybe matching your photos to your words there.
So the restaurant posted both of these pictures, including the original one. This wasn't like a bystander took the first one?
No, they said that was their first one, and then after they got the backlash, they posted the right one. So.
And their position is that the picture on the right is basically what you see on the left, but just from a different angle?
Yes.
I don't know about that so much, but okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah, so something maybe to consider, when you're posting on social media.
The lesson is, remember, everyone's watching. Be careful, especially in these early days. Certainly for safety reason and also perception.
Right. There's the Twitter police out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, speaking of social media, so this is Pleasant House Pub here in Chicago. And, we're probably about a month open or off from opening in Chicago here. But I think this is just a lesson in getting that word out early about what you're doing. When things started to lock down, we all got all of those emails, in the first couple of days about what every restaurant was doing. And so it's really hard to kind of break through that noise. So, if you can get that information out now and then continue and keep it up, everybody's going to be at different places. Even if you've been open for a week and you think, things are back to normal, everybody's back in the restaurant, that person who comes in your restaurant the next day, it may be their first time out. So, just keep up that information.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, sort of signaling that we're not just doing this last second. We've been preparing for this moment the entire time, essentially. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is an example from Kansas City. My cousin used to live there, and this Jones Barbecue actually, it was back in the winter. They had been playing around with a vending machine idea, and we'll see more examples of vending in these scenarios now. And that was actually just because people came up to them at like 2 a.m. wanting some barbecue, and they were like, "Well, let's do this vending machine." But now in this case, you know, it's actually really helpful, and it makes a lot of sense where you don't have to have those people, and you can just go and grab your food, and maybe something to consider in the future as well.
So these are cold. These are cold things you take back and reheat in your oven or something. Is that the idea?
Yeah, yeah. But it is kind of that, just thinking about, you might not need someone to actually be there, and you can just grab it. Like Mike said, not as many touch points.
Does Chicago still have that? Actually, wasn't Chicago with that cupcake vending machine? You still have that?
I think we do. Yeah, sprinkles, the little cupcake. Yeah, we do have that.
Yeah. Well, I know we have Farmer's Fridge, which has been expanding a lot, and I know there's a ton of interest in Farmer's Fridge now.
Yep.
And then Sally from Chobot X is really making a big push into.
Yeah, it's been doing well actually at grocery stores that don't want to have a human salad bar anymore, and they're starting to put in Sally robots instead.
Yeah. Yeah. This is an example from Fat Rice here in Chicago had actually announced that they are closing, which I'm super sad about. They said that they're closing their restaurant indefinitely, and this is an example of something that's done really well, I think. They have pivoted to this Fat Rice Mart. So they have the whole new site, and it's all this like fun, like Pac-Man video game style, and they're moving to only meal kits. So having people come up and pick up, what they can make their dishes from. So.
Yeah, I think that's also why it's so important to have that conversation. If you're a distributor or you're a manufacturer and you work directly with an operator, the operator may be a totally different type of operation after this is all, and their needs are probably a lot different now.
Yeah, definitely keeping that.
And even beyond, just food service, I know we're only 5 minutes from 3 o'clock, so we'll rush through these here. Looking at K through 12 or CNU, schools are already open in Denmark, and it's just going to be so different. In Denmark, they are social distancing in the schools, which is very difficult. There's not a lot of room. So they've actually taken over a lot of the common spaces like gyms, cafeterias, auditoriums, and turned those into classrooms, which means that the cafeteria can't be used for feeding anymore. So they actually need foods that can be delivered to classrooms. So it's only things like sandwiches that are easy to deliver. This is just kind of an example of, the innovation that's happening out there. So Cushman and Wakefield, they came up with this idea mainly for offices. I think you could see it anywhere, but the carpets kind of just have that, black area around the desk that let you know that you should be 6 feet away from somebody. And then kind of a similar idea, I think, we're going to see barriers everywhere. Somebody was saying in Asia, the lucite companies are just going crazy because everybody needs to put a barrier. But he was an inventor out of Texas who actually came up with these vinyl curtains that he's rolling up and shipping to restaurants around the country.
So like $80-$90 or something, right? For each one?
A little bit over $100, I think. Yeah. I think, for those first few weeks, I don't know if it's going to be permanent, but you will see for those first few weeks just barriers everywhere. The one on the left here is an actual, kind of product, which is actually breaking up every single, conversation that you could have at a gaming table in a casino. And then on the right, there's a concept for airlines, actually. So just, breaking that barrier, making sure that there's, ways to keep contact away from each other.
And this is just a little rundown of some of the common practices that I think we're going to start seeing pretty much everywhere. It's almost like the standard, the wiping down tables, sanitizing, and limited time being at tables, things like that. And then some of the next level things, there's a lot of places that are doing A and B staff teams, so splitting it up so that there's one team, several days a week, and then the other days, and that way.
You don't intermix, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't intermix, and that way if somebody on A team gets sick, you're not affecting your entire staff. And then some of those things like the permanent redesign of space. Not sure we're going to actually see those like rugs and whatnot, but some of those more next level things.
Let's take a quick look at some examples from around the world.
Sure, yeah. This is probably the one that, just a month ago, everybody would say it's too science fiction. This would never happen here. But actually, we've, heard of a few locations doing it. I know in Las Vegas, but thermal imaging in, locations. So you can actually see who in your restaurant or who in your operation has a higher temperature. Just some images, out of Asia where they're actually doing this. This is Taiwan, where you can actually see the temperature on each individual person in that room. They actually said that, some people think this is invasive, but then others think this is less invasive than actually doing that, temperature check on your head. So
yeah, that's true. This is in Germany, just a vending machine, again, for masks. So, Jack talked earlier about some unique masks. So maybe, having some fun ones in there. I don't know. You can put that little ninja mask in there. But this isn't a subway station. So once places are reopening, where a lot of people are going to be, having that to the public there.
We'll see one that says like Old Navy on it or something.
Yeah.
Abercrombie. Yeah.
Or for your restaurant, This is actually in Taiwan. They're kind of playing around with virtual stadiums. So instead of people all congregating, watching a sporting event, watching these little cardboard audience members. Just kind of makes
literally going to put cardboard people in the audience to make it seem real.
Yep. I mean, okay. I don't know. How would you feel about that? It's kind of a...
Can you use computer animation for that? It seems sort of...
like the cardboard cutouts. This is in Wuhan. This is, a lot of restaurants there are reopening, but a lot of stories are saying that people aren't necessarily going out. So just showing this visually on social media, or, once your guests are there, this is a chef who's disinfecting some of the food that he's brought in. This is also in Wuhan. This is actually a Lenovo factory with their cafeteria. And this is maybe one of those things that we are probably not going to see in the US, but those little signs there actually reminds everybody to not talk, don't talk, eat really fast, wash your hands, get out of the cafeteria.
This is way too authoritarian. This is crazy. Right? This will not fly over here.
But, there are a lot of restaurants that are limiting the time that people can stay at the restaurant. So that part of it may not be as crazy, I think.
And the one on the left here, some options out of Asia. So this is actually somebody disinfecting some of the tableware right at the table and boiling it, which you may not see in the US, but we have heard of operations that are wrapping individually the plates and actually putting a piece of tape so the person at the table has to open it up. So anything that, just lets them know that it's been disinfected and that they're the first person to touch it. In the center, there's whole body disinfecting. So you actually step in front of that machine and it disinfects your entire body, which we actually could see at, amusement parks or locations where it's really hard to keep people apart. And then on the right is the actual robot delivering foods in a restaurant.
I feel like all of these are super Instagrammable, actually.
Which is, I think they all came from Twitter. So, yeah. And then Black Sheep. So this is a restaurant group. Some of the people who are listening right now might have heard about it out of Hong Kong, just because they've done such a good job with their playbook there. So it's a 17-page playbook that they release to the public so everybody can see what they're doing. And it runs through just about everything that they're doing front of house and back of house. So you can see there in the center, they have a mask for a bag for your face mask at the table, so you can tuck it in there and actually seal it up. That's their health declaration form there. Mm-hmm. They do the A/B teams, and I think it's not just that they have all of these really interesting regulations that they're putting in, but they're just perceived as being so on top of this, and so everybody's looking at them kind of as leaders when it comes to the restaurant that they're going to choose first.
Yeah, and I would say, look, from a customer perception perspective, it almost doesn't matter what they do. The fact that they've been so professional in all things they do make you feel that no matter what they do, they're doing it right for you. And I think that's probably the big lesson for restaurants as we reopen. Mike, Renee, I wanted to thank you. I know we've gone a little bit over on time. I rushed the hell out of you at the end there. I apologize for that.
Speed talk.
I know. Yeah, it's like the Micro Machines guy from the 80s. But everyone, thanks for spending time with us. Please visit the coronavirus webpage. You can download the blue state, red state, chain report, brand new human condition report we just published today, plus 30 or 40 other pieces of great content. And next week's topic is Tales of the Firefly, where we'll actually go across the country and look at the closure and opening data in really great detail. What's open, what's temporarily closed, what's permanently closed, how does that break out by state, by county, is it more common in urban areas and rural areas, chains, independents, everything you wanted to know about the state of the nation as it relates to restaurants and food locations. Again, thank you very much. If you need to get in touch with us, you can find us at hello@datacentral.com. We'd love to show you some of the wonderful things that we have available to you. Thanks so much, and happy May, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye. Take care, everyone.
Mike, Renee, thank you for that. I apologize for rushing you so much. We'll stay on for a couple minutes while everyone else sort of shuffles off. But yeah, I didn't realize how deep into the hour we went until you said, "Oh, it's 2:54
I
or
know.
something."
All of a sudden, it was 2:54. I had no idea what happened. So.
And I'm the one yesterday saying we better watch that clock, and I just totally lost track myself. So yeah, if not for that reminder, we'd be like 15 minutes past or something by now. So thank you for that.
We should build that Snap game into Snap itself.
It's a fun game, right?
It's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were people mostly guessing right, or were there a lot of wrong guesses in there?
Sometimes even before you said anything, they would get adjusted on the number of.
How is that possible?
I know.
I guess if you're like a pro-level Snap user and you've seen the trends and you remember the numbers, like maybe that's.
Our clients are very smart, Jack. That's the thing.
And help make them smarter.
That's why
Yeah.
that's why they know. James was great too. He knew all. I think he got
was like
3 out of 5.
Yeah, look, when you can guess the trend that you can't pronounce, you know you got it, right? I mean, so
I'm still here.
I thought you were, so I wanted to thank you. You did a great job.
Yeah, that
Well,
was
thank
awesome.
you. And it was very sincere, Jack, of what I said. I started a new job on March 9th, being an outside sales distributor, coming from being an owner operator. So I've seen both sides of everything. So that my health issue actually turned into a blessing in disguise that I didn't have to go through this as an operator. So, but it has been awesome to sit here and listen to this and pass this along to not only the sales team, but to our customers as well. And again, what you all do is fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, James. We are all just trying to come together as an industry. I actually love these Friday sessions. It feels really uplifting to me to just, hear from you and everybody else. So thank you for that. Mike, Renee, I guess we'll make the game harder next time is the takeaway.
Next time we look at the answers.
Yeah.
James, again, thank you so much for the comments. And for those of you still on, we're going to drop now. Thank you all. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.